In today's video, we have 4 stories from the Reddit forum r/nosleep. A huge thank you to the writers for allowing me to share these stories. Their links can be found in the description. Remember, you can send in your own story to rylhstories@gmail.com. If you enjoy the video, please be sure to drop a like and comment. Subscribing if you're new is also very much appreciated. Enjoy the video, and as always, I hope you all have a great night. I just turned 18 today, which surfaced this repressed memory, as it's how old my dad was when this happened. I was only 2 years old, but the memory is still clear as day, as it was the first time I was truly terrified. I know my dad had just left school by this time, as he was at home more and wasn't as stressed or busy as he used to be. It must seem strange that we lived in a decently sized, detached house, since my dad had only just hit 18, and he had a 2-year-old daughter. But his family was well off, and he was on the road to becoming a professional boxer, which was helped by the fact that his dad was the world heavyweight champion. We weren't exactly a regular working class family. Obviously, I didn't know all this at the time, and just knew that I got everything I asked for, which was all I really cared about. Our morning routine was for my dad and I to wake up at around 7 or 8 a.m. He would then give me a bath, get me dressed, and let me run off while he had his shower. However, on this day, it was a typical cold British morning, and when that happened, my dad would just wrap me in his blankets and plop me on his bed when he showered. It just so happened that he hadn't wrapped me up as tight as usual, so I was able to escape. I slid off the bed and ran towards the stairs. I was aiming to go down and play with the dogs, but I was blocked by the dreaded baby gates. Only my dad could open it, and he was smart enough to leave it closed at all times. Defeated, I sat down behind the gate. The way our house was designed, the stairs led straight to the front door, meaning I had a full view of it where I sat. On days where my dad went for training, my grandma would come to the house to take me to daycare, or back to her house if she wasn't busy. She had a spare key so she could come in on her own, without having to disturb my dad, and wait for him to get the door. Every time she came in, she would call, "Hello," in her sing-song voice. I would call back to her, and she would come to get me from wherever I was. This sing-song voice was what I heard after about 5 minutes of sitting behind that gate. I was about to call back, when multiple realizations hit me one by one. Even in my 2-year-old brain, I could figure out that something was wrong. The first thing I noticed was that the call had come from the back of the house. My grandma never came in through the back, as our husky slept outside in the back garden, and she hated him. The next thing I noticed was that the voice was deeper and more hoarse than my grandma's. She didn't even sound like that when she was ill. That was not her voice. The third realization was what sent me running back to my dad's room. I had been watching the front door the whole time, and it never opened. Nobody had come through the door. Nobody was even outside the door at any point. I would have seen them through the frosted glass. Upon putting all of this together, I picked myself up and sprinted as fast as my little legs could carry me back to my dad's room, and under the blankets where I lay there shivering. I heard the bathroom door open, and out walked my dad fully dressed, with dampened hair. I lifted my head to see him smiling down at me. He picked me up and held me to his hip. I buried my face in his neck and whined. He must have thought I was crying from hunger because I remember him saying this: "Are you that hungry? I'm sorry I took so long. Let's go get some food now." I jerked my head up and shook it violently. He looked confused and put me down on the floor. "You don't want breakfast? What is it then?" I tried to tell him with my limited vocabulary that someone was downstairs. All that came out was babbles and sobs. His face went from confused to concern, and he patted my head while shushing me. "Maya, can you tell Daddy what's wrong?" I calmed down as best as I could, and managed to form a somewhat comprehensible sentence. "Somebody's downstairs, and not Nana." His eyebrows furrowed, and he scooped me up again and held me against his chest. I knew he was strong and could protect me from whoever or whatever was down there. He walked slowly to the top of the stairs and opened the baby gate, which creaked painfully. He tiptoed down, and when he was nearly at the bottom, the door flew open and I heard my grandma's signature call. It was her voice this time. I wiggled and called back to her until my dad handed me over to her, so he could go to the kitchen. He came back to tell us there was no one there. My grandma was obviously confused at this, as she didn't know what had happened before she got there. She must have assumed he was checking for monsters, as she didn't reply and just walked with me back to the kitchen. The kitchen was at the back of our house, where I heard the first call. She sat me in my high chair while she prepared a bowl of cereal for me. As I looked around the room, I saw something that made my blood run cold. I bounced up and down in my chair and whined to get their attention. When they both looked at me, I pointed to the cellar door, which was cracked open. My dad always closed it fully every night, as I was convinced that there was a monster down there that would come up and eat us if he didn't shut it. My grandma knew of this routine, and she was the first to speak up. "Why is it open?" None of us said anything, but I'm sure they were thinking the same thing. My grandma yanked me out of the high chair and bolted through the hallway and out the door, where she practically threw me into her car. I cried for my dad, as I didn't want him to be alone in that house with whatever was in there. He came up to the window on my side of the car, which was down. I was in tears, and he wiped my face and told me I would be fine because I was with Grandma. As he stepped away from the car, I saw something, or rather someone, behind him. It was a fully nude woman. She had long dark hair, crazed eyes, and a wide grin. I saw the glint of something large and metallic in her hand, which I later learned was a knife. I had never seen a naked woman before, so I was horrified by what I saw. I was so stunned that I couldn't say anything at first. I just stared at her standing behind him with that awful grin. As my grandma's car started to move forward, I snapped out of my state of shock, just quick enough to warn him, "Daddy, look!" I pointed at the woman who ran towards him as soon as I screamed. He turned around in time to see her leap at him. My grandma turned out of our street, so I couldn't see him anymore. I spent the day at my grandma's house, shivering and crying in my dad's old bedroom. When she drove me back home, I protested, but she assured me everything was fine. My dad opened the door with a smile as if nothing had happened, took me from his mom, and closed the door. Since then, that day was never brought up, and we all pushed it to the back of our minds until now. Today I decided to ask my dad what had happened that day. He told me everything. He said that he and Grandma had seen the woman through the crack of the cellar door, so they acted as if they didn't know she was there, as a ploy to get me out of there quickly. Their plan was for my grandma to drive me away and my dad to stay back and deal with the woman. He told me that he didn't know she had left the cellar and was behind him. He had narrowly avoided being stabbed because I warned him that she was there. It turns out he managed to evade the knife just in time and pushed her back, which caused her to fall and hit her head on the concrete in our driveway. She was knocked unconscious. He called the police, who came quickly and carted the woman off. He later found out that she used to teach at his 6th form and had developed an unhealthy obsession with him while he was a student there. She stalked him for years, meaning that she knew every detail of his life. She knew about me. She knew where my daycare was. She knew who my mom was. She even knew where my mom was, which was something my dad himself didn't even know. She knew our address, my grandparents' address, the gym he trained at, the car he drove, everything. She quit her job when he left the school. She had broken into our house a few weeks before his 18th birthday, which was also my 2nd birthday, so she could memorize our routine. She did this so she knew exactly when I would be alone. It turned out she had convinced herself that she was in a relationship with my dad, and she was upset that I was there. She wanted to kill me so she could have him to herself, and have her own children with him. Creepy, right? Her plan was for me to answer her imitation of my grandma's call. She knew my dad was in the shower and most likely wouldn't hear anything, and she knew I would be completely defenseless without him there. I really could have died that day. My dad and Grandma kept that from me for 16 whole years, but now I know the truth. To be honest, I wish I had never asked. To think my dad and I both narrowly avoided being killed by a crazy woman through pure luck sends shivers down my spine. A while back, my 16th birthday was just around the corner. My wish list consisted of the latest phone, a new laptop, clothes, and a trip around the world. Knowing my parents aren't made out of money, I just hoped I would be able to check one of the items off my list. I was lucky enough my birthday landed on a Saturday, so I had the whole day to myself. As I walked down the stairs, I saw my parents smiling, as my presents were wrapped so perfectly laid all around them. "Happy birthday, sweetie," my mother said, as they both approached me. After a group hug and thanking them for everything, I started unboxing everything. I was shocked to discover they were able to get clothes and a new laptop, among many other items. I also received some new furniture for my room, one of them being a full-body mirror to attach to the back of my door. I was eager to set up everything in my room. However, my parents wanted to take me out to eat breakfast. Upon coming back home, with the help of my parents, we placed the presents in my room. When everything was pretty much where it needed to be, I turned on my laptop. Starting to set up my laptop, I noticed I forgot to hang up my mirror. My father had to help me, since we had to screw it to the door. Looking into it, I was so happy that I finally had a mirror where I could see my whole body and not just my head and shoulders. I then spent the majority of the day trying on my new clothes, as I admired my reflection. The rest of the day I played on my new laptop. Then my friends came over when my cake was finally finished. I do remember that night was bright, due to the fact that it was a full moon. As I turned my lights off, I jumped into bed and grabbed my phone. After around an hour, I realized I never brushed my teeth. I didn't even need to turn a light on, as I've mentioned it was quite bright. Standing in front of my door, about to open it, I couldn't see anything in the reflection of the mirror. I thought this was odd, since it was light enough to have seen an outline of everything. When I finished in the bathroom, I turned off the light, and was able to see my silhouette. This bothered me, but for only a moment, as it was not a major problem. The following days after were the same. I still couldn't see my reflection when it was dark in my room, but it never really concerned me. One night I had so much homework I had to stay up past midnight working. I wasn't able to finish and it was getting too late, so I decided to finish it in the morning. I turned off my lights and climbed into bed. As I laid down, I noticed light was coming out of my mirror. It wasn't very bright, just light enough to where a ray as wide as the mirror stretched for a few feet. Startled, I just stared in disbelief, too scared to look into the mirror. Then after just a few moments, the light suddenly disappeared. It was like someone just turned off a light switch. Too tired to even move, I decided to mention it in the morning. It felt like I've been sleeping for a total of 1 minute when my alarm woke me up in the morning. Grabbing my leftover work, I headed to the kitchen table. As I was making a bowl of cereal, I asked my parents where they got the mirror from. My mother stated it was from the local mall. My mother asked me why I wanted to know, and I wanted to tell her, but I don't want her to think I'm crazy. So I lied. That night I was hesitant to turn off my lights. I stared into the mirror and saw nothing but myself staring back. I kept looking at my reflection as my hand reached for the switch. When I turned off my light, I saw nothing. I should have been able to see my outline, but I was relieved I didn't see whatever was on the other side of the mirror. Later that night, I was awoken to the unusual amount of light in my room. As my eyes opened, I noticed the light was coming from the mirror. This time it was much brighter and illuminated my whole room. Having more bravery than before, I head towards the source. Right before standing in its view, I stopped preparing for the worst and jumped in front of it. To my surprise, there was only a room very much like mine. The only difference was the order everything was in. Looking deeply in the room, I ran as soon as I saw the door of their bedroom open. The light only stayed on for a few seconds, then it was pitch black again. I was in pure shock of what I just witnessed. Staring at my ceiling, I finally came to a conclusion. To prove my theory, I turned my light on, and did in fact see my own reflection again. Right then, I knew my mirror is a window. As the days went on, most of the time no light would come through the mirror into my room, but when it did, my curiosity took over, and I studied it. However, I still did not have the courage to stay put whenever the door opened. After a while, I finally did have the courage to stay, and I wish I didn't. As the door opened, my heart rate was 3 times faster, but I still stayed. Shocked at the being that walked towards the mirror, I just stood still. Then they recognized me, and let out an unbelievably high-pitched cry for help, as they fell to the ground unresponsive. I have never seen anything look like that before. It was so short, maybe around 6 foot, and only had 4 limbs. "18 years ago, I ran away from here. I came back to Phoenix, Arizona. I came here because of my father's funeral. He died of a heart attack some days ago. Honestly, I don't really care. We were never that close. He was always very strict with me and seemed to like my sister more than me. It was the day before the funeral. The sun was about to set. I was surrounded by the sound of silence and rustling leaves as I walked through the dense forest. I reached the glade after walking for some time. It had been a long time since I stepped my foot on the grasses and shrubs of the forests of Arizona, and I must say, it was hard for me to come back. This place is filled with both the best and the worst memories of my childhood. When I was a child, I would come here with my little sister, Mel, in the evening. It was like our secret place, where no one could hurt us. Spending a few hours under the twinkling stars with these trees reminded me that the world was not as inhuman as my house portrayed it to be. We would sometimes wander around or carve stick figures on the trees, or lie down on the grass and just stare at the navy blue sky. This place was like a safe haven for us, where we could come and get some rest, as we couldn't get much sleep at nights, especially after Mom died, and Dad changed completely. My sister Mel loved exploring. When she was young, she would run after the bees and insects flying in our garden. She also had this weird obsession with shiny objects, thinking about how she would stare at Mom's ring with her dumbfounded eyes, and how her lips would take the shape of a circle in adoration of the white stone. Always makes me giggle. But after some time, I find teardrops rolling down my cheeks. I found tears collecting my eyes once again, as I walked up to a long tree and found a drawing carved out in the bark. I was 12 when I had carved out the stick figures of me and my sister holding hands, with a wide smile on each of our faces. I rubbed my eyes, trying my best to suppress my flowing emotions. The worst event of my life played again and again in my mind. We were right here. I remembered how happy I was in the calm before the storm. It was March 13th, 1997. I was just 13 and Mel was 7. We had spent almost 2 hours in the glade. It was about 8 o'clock at night, almost time to go back home. I distinctly remember sitting reclined on a tree, Mel lying on the grass next to me. A cool breeze blew through my hair as we stared at the twinkling stars and the glimmering full moon. That is when I saw 5 orange lights moving high above in the sky. They were moving together in a V formation, with 1 light in the middle and 2 on either sides. It looked like they were all a part of one massive aircraft, which moved very slowly in the sky, without making any sound. I couldn't understand what the source of the light was. Maybe it was a huge airplane. "Hey Mel, check out the sky," I said, and turned towards my sister. But she was not there lying on the grass, where I had expected her to be. I looked forward and saw her running towards the lights in the sky. "Mel, wait!" I shouted at her, but she didn't stop. She was far ahead of me. I sprung up and ran as fast as I could through the forest, dodging the trees in my way. A flash of bright light pierced through the darkness. It was there for just a second, and it was gone in a second too. My brotherly instincts told me to run faster and faster. I looked around everywhere. My heart was racing as a feeling of dread filled my mind. I checked everywhere. Between shrubs, behind trees and rocks. I could not let Mel run into the hands of danger. I shouted out her name several times. There was no response. I looked up into the sky to search for the orange lights. They were gone. Mel was gone too. From then on, my father of course was very angry with me and began treating me even more cruelly. I never went back to the woods again. I was forbidden to do so, but I also didn't want to. I used to go there so that my mind could find some peace, but now I would just remember that I was a bad brother. Losing Mel was like losing my life. She was the only reason I could smile. The only reason that helped me from losing my mind when living in this hellhole. For the next 4 years, I was all alone. When Father's friends came to my house at nights, and during the times I had to clean up all the bottles on the floor, the rest of the days, I was all alone with my father. I let her run away. I was the reason why she disappeared. Where did she go? And what were those orange lights? These thoughts haunted me every second of my life. I would stay up late at nights, watching reports and documentaries, and reading books on unidentified objects. My father continued to be a living nightmare. So when I was 17, I ran away from home, worked at several odd jobs, and moved to LA. It has been 18 full years since then. No matter what I do, I cannot stop my eyes from watering every now and then when I look at the picture of me with Mel and Mom. I sat against the tree I did so many years ago and replayed the same moment thousands of times in my mind, trying to change the situation so that Mel would be sitting next to me. When I was deep in my thoughts, I saw a flash of light in the sky. Then I heard the sound of an animal walking behind me. I turned around and saw a figure. It was not an animal. It was a human figure walking in the woods. I concentrated on the silhouette as it grew bigger and bigger. I didn't believe my eyes when I saw her face. She walked towards me. Was it really her, or was it some apparition conjured by my mind? It looked like her. The eyes and the nose were just the same, but she looked so thin and withered. Her lips were gray and her skin was pale. Her dark hair was cut very short. She had cut marks in her arms and right cheek. She stared into my eyes. She had recognized me. A little smile formed on her face. I tried to say something, but the thousands of emotions failed to come out from my mouth. I extended my arms out. She came closer and wrapped her arms around me. I knew for sure. It was Mel. We stood there for a long time, oceans of tears flowing down our eyes. During that time, I didn't want to know how and what had happened. I just knew that my little sister was nestled in my arms, and finally, after so many years, we were truly safe. I live in a quiet neighborhood nearby a quiet town. It can get so still in the night you can hear the train running a mile away. No joke. But like every town, mine has secrets. It was just another Tuesday night, around 8 or 9 p.m. At the time, it was February, so it would get dark earlier. And not just dark, but pitch black. The only light that helped was from the neighbors leaving on their porch lights before sleep. We had ours on, since I was the only one up. The rest of the family had gone to sleep as they work early. At the time, I only worked on the weekends, so I would stay up late and play video games. Before getting into another marathon of gaming and talking with friends, I had to take out the trash. Easy enough. Gather the cans from the bathrooms and bring the cans outside. It was snowy, but not enough to warrant road closure, and not even that cold. So I grabbed my usual navy blue hoodie and gathered the cans. When taking out the trash, I usually play music to keep me company. So I put some music on and get everything together. Everything went smoothly as it always does, until I bring the can to the end of the driveway. The sole streetlight at the end of the street was positioned over a single figure. The figure was in total darkness. Even with the light overhead, I stopped for a second to see the figure. The shape just stood there, with no indication of his path. For a moment, a thought crossed my mind. Maybe he's out for a run, nothing too out of the ordinary. I thought to myself, while studying the figure, This is when he starts moving, and not just a light jog, but running. I nearly stopped dead and ran into the garage at the end of our driveway. My only hope was that he didn't see me, so I can be safe in my home. The hoodie and my jeans helped me blend into the night, but the snow prints in the driveway gave me away. I was at the window, hiding underneath to avoid detection. I saw the figure stop at the driveway and see the shoe path. I peeked out into the bleak winter nights and felt a chill down my spine as he looked into the window I was at. I leaned down and hoped for his departure. I waited a minute and looked again. He was gone, or so I think. I go to the front door, shaking with fear from my encounter. I look out the windows by the door for any sign of life in the frozen nothingness. Nothing. No tracks from neither human nor animal. I turn the light off and head to the family room. We have a large sliding glass door leading to a homemade deck. I turn on that light and look for more tracks. Nothing. I'd guess the man just continued his run and left me alone. A sigh of relief escaped my chest, and I went upstairs to my room to change into comfortable clothes for the night ahead. All the while I had a sneaking guess on who this late night runner was. I had no clue. But it was common in our neighborhood. People jog during the day, and some at night. But they often wear a light to display to cars their location. But this person didn't. It creeped me out, and I went downstairs to play games with my friends. I didn't bring up the story as they would just call me stupid and crazy. We had a nice conversation, and after a while I went to sleep. They helped to calm my nerves, so I actually could sleep again. The next day I had off work again. Everyone had left for their jobs early, which gave me the house to myself. Normally I would stay in and watch some YouTube or some movies, but not today. I decided to go investigate the neighborhood for any signs of the figure who I dubbed the Runner. I grabbed my winter gear and headed out, in search of a face for the Runner. The neighborhood I live in is rather small, so it made my makeshift investigation easier. I wandered the streets for hope of finding the Runner again. No luck. So he might just work during the day. I went down to the end of my neighborhood, where a small park is nestled between our neighborhood and another development. A small wooded area greets park goers, with a creek and a lot of vast emptiness. I figured to explore this area, as it may yield a clue to aid in my mission. I go off the path and venture into the woods. It's not long before I find something out of the ordinary. A wooden board on the ground, with no snow on it. The snowfall wasn't insane, but enough to leave a dusting, but this board had nothing. I gently moved the board, to find a sight I didn't expect. A hole with a ladder leading downwards. I made sure to grab some rope in case my travels led me somewhere that may be hard to escape. Some people have big houses in this neighborhood, so escape could prove difficult. I spot a sturdy tree, and tie one end of the rope to it. The other end goes around my stomach, so I can find my way out, and won't travel too far into wherever I wander. I go down the ladder and more chills cover my body. The hole leads to a small man-made cave. It looked like it was made in a hurry. I grab my flashlight and inspect the cave. There is enough space to crawl, but not truly move around. The hole goes deeper to find a sleeping bag next to a pile of unknown origin. Upon farther inspection, the sleeping bag is empty, so I won't have to worry too much. What truly worries me is the pile of items covered by a single black tarp. An odor of rot came to me when entering the cavern, but now comes with a strong power. I lift a bit of the tarp to see a dead body. The eyes taken out, the jaw unhinged. Flies and maggots swarm the carcass, and I hold back vomit. I look at the corpse with a hand covering my mouth. It was a woman, maybe in her early 30s. I cover up the body and make my way out of the cave, gagging the entire way. After returning to the surface, I proceed to vomit and cover up the hole. I make sure everything looks like it did before I came in, and begin to untie the rope from the tree. As I'm about to depart, I see him. He went for a jog in the neighboring community and left his makeshift hideaway. He stood there, his eyes piercing into my soul. I froze for a second and ran like hell from the door. He gave chase, so I tried to lose him in the streets. By all my luck, a blizzard hit to save me. The heavy snowfall blinded my attacker, giving me the chance to run back home. I faced strong winds before, so it was easy to traverse the snowfall. Once inside, I went to the basement and called the police, and told them of the events of the past 2 days. I stayed downstairs to catch my breath, and to avoid the runner. After about 15 minutes, I went upstairs to the front door. A squad car was parked in the driveway, with an officer at the door. He looked at me and asked me to show him where the door was. We went and drove to the park. The officer asked me to identify the location of the door. I aided him, thinking the recent blizzard covered the board. It had, but the indentation made it easy to find. He lifted the board and began his descent. I stayed at the top, since I told him about the size. I waited a bit for the officer to return. I guessed he was trying to find the runner. After another minute of thinking, the cop comes up without his eyes. The runner was in the cave and gouged them out. His body was pushed with force and landed face first in the snow. I panicked and grabbed a gun on his side. The runner looked at me. I cocked the gun and fired a shot towards where the runner was. I looked and saw a hole in his head between his eyes. The runner fell and blood pooled out onto the fresh snow. I dropped the gun and sat in shock for a moment. I spent time with a therapist in hopes to recover from the incident, with some progress made. Whenever a runner passes by, I flash back to the runner and the images he left in my brain.